With the 2019 NFL Draft now concluded and 254 rookies having been selected by their new teams, plus hundreds of other first-year players who will sign as free agents over the next week, the 2019 versions of each NFL franchise are starting to take focus. But that doesn't mean there aren't questions for each team going forward. Our NFL Nation reporters were asked to identify the biggest question for each team. Whether the teams answer those questions between now and week 1 is out of our control, but hey, it doesn't hurt to ask. Scan through all 32 teams by division, or click here to jump ahead to your team. AFC East Buffalo Bills. Who is the number 1 receiver? The Bills addressed several areas of need during the draft but did not select a wide receiver. That leaves the Bills with a mix of number 2 or no. 3 options in Zay Jones, John Brown and Cole Beasley, but no bona fide top target for Josh Allen. Mike Rodak. Miami Dolphins. Who is going to rush the quarterback? The Dolphins had too many needs to address all of them in the draft, but edge rusher sticks out in a big way. 5th round pick Andrew Van Ginkel could eventually work his way into a situational role, but he is the top addition for a team that finished 29th in sacks, 31, last season and lost its best 3 edge rushers. Disappointing 2017 first-round pick Charles Harris is the team's top defensive end. Look for Miami to examine the free agency market in this area after the compensatory formula ends May 8th and again after post-June 1st cuts. Cameron Wolf. Play 123 Woody. Patriots had the best overall draft. Damian Woody evaluates the players New England added in the draft, including wide receiver N'Keal Harry. New England Patriots. Did the Patriots do enough at as they enter the post-Gronk era? This was viewed by some as a deep tight end class, but the Patriots didn't select a player at the position. That leaves Austin Seferian-Jenkins, Jacob Hollister, Steven Anderson, Matt Lacosi and Ryan Izzo on the depth chart, which means someone under the radar will have to emerge unless the team has another personal move in mind, e.g., trade for Kyle Rudolph or lure Benjamin Watson out of retirement. Izzo was a 2018 7th-round draft choice from Florida State who flashed last training camp and thus could be someone to watch after spending his rookie season on injured reserve. Mike Rise. New York Jets. Did the Jets err by not drafting a center? Right now, they're counting on Jonathan Harrison, who began last season on the bench before stepping into the lineup as an injury replacement. Team officials say they're okay with Harrison, based on the offense showing some signs of life late in the season, but it's still a gamble. Ideally, they should have a seasoned center who can help second-year QB Sam Darnold navigate the pre-snap issues every quarterback faces. Rich Cimini. AFC North. Baltimore Ravens. What are the Ravens going to do at inside linebacker? After losing C.J. Mosley in free agency, Baltimore didn't add a replacement for its leading tackler with any of its 8 draft picks. The Ravens didn't find much value with this inside linebacker class, which was thinner than other positions. Team officials appear comfortable going with Patrick Onwuezer, who finished strong, and Kenny Young, a 4th-round pick from a year ago, in the middle of their retooled defense. The Ravens have a history of finding quality undrafted inside linebackers and also could sign a veteran who's still available. Jamison Hensley. Cincinnati Bengals. Did the Bengals do enough to fix the defense? The Bengals surprised quite a few when they waited until the 3rd round to draft the linebacker, a huge area of need. Considering the Bengals were once on pace to have the worst defense in league history last season, they've got a lot of work to do. The draft might not have been enough to fix the holes on that side of the ball. Catherine Terrell. Cleveland Browns. Is Freddie Kitchens up for this? The Browns have put together a talented roster with some spicy personalities and several others who are trying to move past previous character concerns. We know that Kitchens can scheme a dynamic offense, but his ability to manage Cleveland's complex locker room is largely unknown after he's spent a career as a position coach, the biggest variable when projecting the Browns season. Kevin Seifert. Pittsburgh Steelers. Who is the Steelers? No. 2 wide receiver. Juju Smith-Schuster is the unquestioned top target for Ben Roethlisberger, but the secondary option remains up in the air. James Washington is an unknown commodity after a lackluster rookie season, and free agent pickup Dante Moncrief hasn't caught more than 50 passes since 2015. The wildcard will be Deontay Johnson, who was selected in the 3rd round with the pick Pittsburgh acquired in the trade for Antonio Brown. He looks like a clone of Brown, from his size, 5'10", to his strengths, slippery in the open field and dependable hands. Jamison Hensley AFC South Play 101 NFL Draft Profile. Titus Howard Alabama states Titus Howard has a good blend of abilities and is tough to beat when his hand placement is sound in pass protection. Houston Texans are two rookies going to be enough to vastly improve the offensive line? The Texans drafted two versatile tackles in Titus Howard, no. 23, and Max Scharping, no. 55, but only time will tell whether those additions will help sufficiently protect Deshaun Watson. The third-year quarterback was sacked an NFL high 62 times last season. Sarah Barshop Indianapolis Colts, who will be the third starting linebacker alongside Darius Leonard and Anthony Walker. The Colts selected three outside linebackers in the draft, including using their second-round pick on TCU's Ben Banogu. Bobby Okereke, 3rd round, and Jerry Green, 6th round, will be competing with returners such as Matthew Adams and Zaire Franklin for that spot. Mike Wells, Jacksonville Jaguars 2019 NFL Draft Coverage. What you need to know from rounds 1 to 7. Cody Davis is a special teams player, and C.J. Rivas didn't play much as a rookie. That doesn't bode well if there are any injuries. The Jaguars seem to be willing to gamble a bit there, though they will certainly keep an eye open for veteran cuts between now and the start of the season. Mike Duraco, Tennessee Titans. Did the Titans properly address the OLB spot opposite Harold Landry? Even though a lot of analysts thought the Titans would use an early pick on an OLB, the team waited until the 5th round to do so. OLB DeAndre Walker fell to the Titans in the 5th round, but he was the only edge prospect who was selected. Landry will definitely be one of the starters, but Walker needs to emerge as a candidate opposite Landry. Turn Davenport AFC West Denver Broncos. So the Broncos have the patience and discipline to let Drew Lock find his way? The Broncos decision-makers made it clear this past weekend, Lock has plenty to work on and needs time to address those things as the quarterback of the future, as John Elway put it. Elway and coach Vic Fangio have been adamant that Joe Flacco is the starter. Everybody involved will have to stick to that, through any losses, Flacco interceptions and the general swirl that usually surrounds a quarterback in waiting. And Flacco, who already has won over his new Broncos teammates, will need to be at his composed best to handle the questions sure to come his way about Lock. In the end, the Broncos will be at their best if Flacco is the quarterback Elway and Fangio think he is, and if Lock gets the time he needs to grow into the player he can be. Jeff Legwold, Kansas City Chiefs. Did the Chiefs adequately prepare for the potential loss of Tyreek Hill? The Chiefs traded up in the 2nd round to draft Georgia W.R. Mecole Hardman, but he might not be enough to cover for the loss of Hill, who is suspended and might eventually be released. Without Hill, the Chiefs would go with Sammy Watkins and Demarcus Robinson as their starting receivers. The speedy Hardman will have to contribute in a significant way. Adam Tyker, Los Angeles Chargers. Will the Chargers regret passing on adding immediate help for the O-line? Young offensive linemen such as right tackle Sam Tevi and left guard Dan Feeney struggled at times in pass protection in 2018, but the Chargers added just one offensive lineman in the draft, developmental prospect Trey Pipkins in the 3rd round. A product of Division II Sioux Falls, Pipkins is raw and unlikely to see meaningful minutes in 2019, so the Chargers will rely on the return of guard Forrest Lamp from an ACL injury and continuity along the offensive line for improvement in 2019. Eric D. Williams, Oakland Raiders. Did the Raiders do enough in the draft to address the lack of a pass rush? True, Oakland, which had a league-low 13 sacks last season, did use 6 of its 9 picks on defensive players, with 3 of those being defensive ends. And although first-rounder Clelin Ferrell had 27 sacks in his Clemson career, fourth-rounder Max Crosby had 20 career sacks at Eastern Michigan, and seventh-rounder Quentin Bell got 7.5 sacks in his lone season at the position after switching from receiver at Prairie View A. Especially since the 4 defensive ends already on the roster, Benson Mayowa, 13, Josh Morrow, 3, Arden Key, 1, and Alex Barrett, 0, have a combined 17 sacks in the NFL. Paul Gutierrez, NFC East. Dallas Cowboys. Do the Cowboys still need help at safety? They considered Juan Thornhill in the 2nd round but went with defensive tackle Tristan Hill instead. They were considering Will Harris in the 3rd, but he was plucked before the 90th pick. They added Donovan Wilson in the 6th round. At present, the Cowboys have Xavier Woods and Jeff Heath as their starters, just like last year, although George Iloka will have a chance to compete for a starting spot. The Cowboys continue to follow Rod Marinelli's belief that a safety is not one of the most important pieces to the defense. "We felt better than people from the outside looking in feel about our safety position," Executive Vice President Stephen Jones said. "I've mentioned time and time again that we don't have as much resources allocated to that position, and it is probably not by accident. But will that turn into the soft spot that prevents the Cowboys from taking the next step in 2019? Todd Archer Play 131 Max Vents on Giants picked Jones as a day 2 guy. Max Kellerman pops off on the Giants picking Daniel Jones at No. 6 in the draft, saying he shouldn't have even been picked in the first round. New York Giants: when will we see Daniel Jones? The Giants invested the number 6 overall pick in a quarterback, but the intention is to start Eli Manning this season. Jones could enter the lineup midway through his rookie season like Manning did, sit like Patrick Mahomes did for almost all of his rookie year with the Chiefs, or wait multiple years like Aaron Rodgers did. Only time will tell. Jordan Rowan on Philadelphia Eagles: who is going to replace Jordan Hicks? The Eagles' middle linebacker for parts of the past 4 seasons is now in Arizona, and though they did pick up L.J. Fort in free agency, the linebacker position still feels light. Executive Vice President of Football Operations Howie Roseman noted post-draft that talent acquisition season is not over. "Look for them to add via trade or signing before the offseason is through." Tim McManus Washington Redskins: when will Dwayne Haskins be ready? The Redskins have long considered him to have big upside. He has arm talent, is smart, and is willing to work. But they know it will take some time due to his inexperience, with only 14 starts in college. They want to see how he handles the transition to an NFL offense and throwing with a different level of anticipation to succeed. Because he's a true pocket passer, they want to make sure he's adept at those areas before taking over. The key will be having a fan base and ownership that remains patient and allows him to develop the right way. To help that, Case Keenum must produce enough early to win games. Haskins could pay off big time for Washington, but he shouldn't be rushed. John Keim NFC North: Chicago Bears: who will be the place kicker? This is a hot-button issue for the Bears after the Cody Parkey debacle last season. General Manager Ryan Pace said over the weekend that Chicago intends to have 4 kickers on its off-season roster. There are currently no clear-cut favorites to win the job, and the competition is wide open. Coach Matt Nagy believes the entire situation will eventually work itself out. Bears fans certainly hope he's right. Jeff Dickerson: Detroit Lions Draft Academy documents the journey of 6 prospects: Nick Bosa, Marquise Brown, Drew Luck, Tyree Jackson, Jarrett Stidham, and Josh Jacobs. Watch on ESPN who plays right guard. This wasn't necessarily going to be solved during the draft, but the Lions ignored the offensive line with their 9 selections. Although it's entirely possible the right guard isn't on the roster yet, based on what Detroit has now, the club will have a pretty open competition between Kenny Wiggins, Joe Dahl, Oday Aboushi, and perhaps Tyrell Crosby during training camp. An outside possibility, if the Lions end up in a real pinch, is moving Graham Glasgow back to guard and starting Leo Kaloamatangi at center, but that would seem like a last resort. Pay attention the next few weeks because signing a veteran guard is a possibility. Michael Rothstein: Green Bay Packers: the Packers still need another receiver. Some mock drafts had them taking 1 in the first round. They didn't take 1 at all. It leaves Davante Adams without the aid of a true No. 2. The Packers clearly are banking on the return of Geronimo Allison, who was off to a hot start before an injury ruined his 2018 season, as well as the second-year development of the young receivers, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Equanimeous Street Brown, Jamon Moore, and Jake Kumerow. Said GM Brian Gutekunst after the draft: "I'm really content with the 3 guys we drafted last year. I think they have huge upsides. I thought they took really good steps last year. Obviously, Geronimo coming back, he's kind of a veteran guy stepping into that role, and I do like some of our guys that are kind of competing for some spots there as well. It's not like we wouldn't add 1 if we thought the right guy was there, but I like that group." Rob Demovsky: Minnesota Vikings show: are the Vikings going to pay everyone? Minnesota was dead last in salary cap space prior to the draft and went on to select 12 players. Though it's unlikely that all of these new players stick, the Vikings need to figure out how they're going to get the estimated $4 million needed to pay their draft class. Since a trade involving Kyle Rudolph didn't pan out, Minnesota could ask the veteran tight end to take a restructure, something he said he is willing to discuss, or cut him to save $7.625 million against the cap. The Vikings also could look to release one of their veterans with a post-June 1st designation. For example, if they went that route with LT Riley Reiff, they could get $9.5 million in savings. Courtney Crone in NFC South Atlanta Falcons. Are the Falcons really set at right tackle? Sure, they traded up into the end of the first round to take Caleb McGarry out of Washington, but coaches and scouts around the league believe McGarry is raw and incapable of handling top pass rushers right now. The Falcons signed Ty Sambrailo to a 3-year extension after he replaced the released Ryan Schroeder at right tackle, but Sambrailo is viewed around the league as more of a backup. Stay tuned. Von McClure. Carolina Panthers. Though the Panthers still need to address the secondary, specifically safety. Eric Reid is the starter at strong safety, and the options at free safety are Donoris Cersei, who missed most of last season with a concussion, and second-year player Rashawn Gowden. There are other options as well, but none with a lot of experience. The same goes at cornerback behind starters James Bradberry and Dante Jackson. There are decent pieces, but according to Pro Football Focus, no Carolina defensive back finished with a coverage grade in the top 100. Perhaps all the effort to upgrade the pass rush will help, but it's still something to keep an eye on. David Newton. New Orleans Saints. Do the Saints have good enough targets for Drew Brees? New Orleans' biggest issue down the stretch of last season was a lack of reliable pass catchers behind Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. Signing Jared Cook in free agency and getting W.R. Ted Ginn Jr. back healthy should help, but the Saints didn't add any receivers in free agency or the draft. So they need to decide if they want to add another veteran or count on the development of young receivers such as Cameron Meredith, Traquan Smith, Keith Kirkwood and Austin Carr. Mike Triplett. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What will the Bucs do with Gerald McCoy, since there was no draft trade and they didn't address defensive tackle until the 7th round? Having him on the books for $13 million means the Bucs have less than $2 million to spend on their draft picks, and they need roughly $10.4 million to sign them. It was $9.2 million, but having an additional third-round pick boosted this figure. McCoy also hasn't been present for any of the off-season workouts. When I asked general manager Jason Licht about clearing up cap space to sign their draft picks, he said, "There's always ways." I then asked if he foresaw having to make a lot of roster moves to free up money. "We don't have to," he said. "The big question is, how?" So far, there have been no indications of McCoy accepting a pay cut, and there have been no indications that he'd even be willing to. Jenna Lane. NFC West. Play 043. Just like that, the 2019 draft is over. Josh Rosen is traded. Just like that, the 2019 draft is over. Josh Rosen is traded and the Cardinals are moving on. Video by Josh Weinfuss. Arizona Cardinals. Are 3 new receivers enough for the Cardinals? One of Arizona's biggest liabilities last season was its receiving core. Beyond Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk, the Cardinals were thin and inexperienced, as the team's next leading receivers were tight ends and running backs. Arizona addressed the need in this year's draft with Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler and Keyshawn Johnson. All 3 are talented and have the potential to be impact players in Cliff Kingsbury's air raid offense. But are they enough? Besides the need to stock the roster with offensive resources for new quarterback Kyler Murray, the Cardinals need enough receivers to keep them coming in waves, almost like hockey lines. And that would mean their draft haul is a good first step, but still not enough. Josh Weinfuss. Los Angeles Rams. Will running back Darrell Henderson fit into the offense? The Rams' decision to move up to No. 70 to take Henderson raises more questions about the health of Todd Gurley's knee. Sean McVay said Henderson was the change of pace back he has been seeking for the past 2 seasons and that Henderson will be a complement to Gurley and backup Malcolm Brown. But, naturally, as uncertainty looms around Gurley, it's easy to wonder if Henderson was selected as an insurance policy. Lindsay. The reason Francisco 49ers can the 49ers secondary make enough internal improvement to complement their improved front seven. The Niners are basically running it back with the same group of defensive backs that had just 2 interceptions last season, save for cornerback Jason Verrett, who has a long history of injury issues. Veteran cornerback Richard Sherman is another year removed from his Achilles injury but is surrounded by question marks. The Niners hope their amped-up pass rush will make things easier on the secondary, but that group is going to need to take a significant step forward under new position coach Joe Woods to maximize their investments up front and for them to take the next step as a defense. Nick Wagoner plays 0-15 Metcalf goes shirtless to Seahawks meeting. Carroll joins HIM. DK Metcalf goes without a shirt at a combine meeting with the Seahawks staff, and Pete Carroll decides to go shirtless himself. Seattle Seahawks. Is this it for Doug Baldwin? GM John Schneider said Baldwin's increasingly uncertain future didn't weigh into the decision to draft DK Metcalf in the second round, perhaps because Metcalf is the type of big receiver they would have wanted to add under any circumstances. But the fact that they drafted two more receivers, Gary Jennings Jr. in round 4 and John Ursua in round 7, does not give the impression that they're expecting Baldwin to be back. Ursua gives them an option to replace Baldwin in the slot. Brady Henderson